Hello, can you all hear me? Sorry about the delay here. Basically, I'm Thomas Burke. I'm the QA lead at Media Current. And a little bit about me, I've been in the QA business for at least over 15 years. I got many moons behind me. I initially started out in the IT industry as a tech support person. And then I ended up into local area networks, did some Novell, Microsoft networks, set them all up. And then as a tech support person and as a local area network, I kept seeing these problems happening. And I started getting into QA, maybe without even realizing it. Say, how can we prevent these problems from happening to begin with? That kind of got me into QA. I did get a master's degree at Southern Polytechnical in QA. I've been working for a lot of Fortune companies, AT&T, Lockheed, Cox Enterprises, and as well as a lot of the smaller private industries as well. Okay, so here are some things that Media Current currently does. I think they're one of the diamond sponsors for this event. Basically, they got digital strategy. They help out a lot of universities, a lot of private industries to do Drupal, 7, 6, and even now with 8. They do design and theming. We got some pretty good themers, front-end people, and some pretty good developers as well. And they do anywhere from small businesses to very enterprise businesses as well. Now here are some of the clients that Media Current currently has. A lot of them are local, Turner, the Weather Channel, NFL. I think one of our first websites was the Dallas Cowboys. My favorite team, but hey, it's pretty exciting though, And Manhattan, they're here locally as well, and they were one of the first businesses to get into Drupal 8. They were even in the beta version, so we're upgrading them all the time with the new fixes and knocking out some of the kinks. So here's pretty much the agenda. Basically, I'm going to go over what is a defect, different types of defects, basically who writes a bug report, when should a bug report be written, some key elements of a good test case, and what happens after once you write an actual defect, and then tips on reducing defects. And I'm going to use the word defect, bug, and issue kind of interchangeably because that's kind of what people use. Let's see here. All right. So basically, why should we care about a good bug reporting? Basically, the main reason is you want to be able to save money. So there's nothing worse than getting somebody writing up a bug and you're trying to figure out what in the world did they say. It doesn't make any sense to me. Then you can do a lot of research. You got to figure out how to duplicate it. You're wasting a lot of time. You're not being efficient. You're not being concise. And so the better the bug report is, basically, if you're going to send it to a developer or a themer, a front-end person, you want them to be able to duplicate the issue and figure out exactly how to replicate it and then fix it, without them having to spend a lot of time trying to dig out what did they actually mean. Sometimes you got to go back to the person who wrote the bug and say, okay, which browser were you using? Which page did you find this on? That's all very inefficient. It wastes a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. So what I'm trying to do here is teach you how to write a better bug report in order to save money. Basically, what is a bug? All right. So normally, a lot of people think bugs are just coding issues, but here's I guess from Wikipedia, a very technical issue. It's a software bug, it's an error, it's flawed, it's failure, it's fault in the computer program system. It's very technical. And from another aspect. It's things that are not right with the software or even hardware. So not all bugs are just limited to software. They can also be hardware as well. And the last one's more from a client perspective, like the actual end user. Like, hey, this isn't working as I expected it to. And they can consider that a bug. They consider that a problem. So you got different types of defects. Like I was saying, a lot of people think it's just a coding issue, but that's really not true. And there are coding bugs. So sometimes, and a lot of times, the bugs come from a bad requirement, or perhaps even the design was flawed from the very beginning. And so that means the requirement has to be straightened out. Sometimes you have a requirement that got changed. That didn't get communicated to everybody. So you have those issues. Front end and theming, a lot of browser issues with that. Maybe the page, when you shrink it, it's not theming correctly. The text is overlapping. Coding, as I mentioned, and sometimes it's a training issue. It's not a bug so much as whoever's using it may not know how to use it. Maybe they weren't trained on it. Maybe there wasn't a help file. Those are things that can be done to help out the end user. And sometimes it's just the environment. You run into that, especially if you're testing, say, in a development or a QA environment, where the environment has issues and you're finding all kinds of things going wrong, and it's not really so much. Sometimes you might just have to clear the cache. That might fix the problem. Sometimes they need to do a reset. You have to basically reboot the server. There's other defects as well. Performance, is the site really slow? I came across one customer recently who had a new interactive map, but boy, it took like forever to load. And so that's a bug. They had to fix it so that it would load much speedier, much faster. That can also include stress. If you have a number of, sometimes maybe a server has too much going on it. You need more hardware in order to spread out the CPU and the memory usage, and therefore that'll keep things speeding. And sometimes it's an enhancement. Sometimes, like I'll find things, I'm like, hey, so these links on the mobile aspect on the footer are not highlighted. Like, I don't know that they're links, but on the desktop they are. So wouldn't it be cool if they were highlighted, had it on the footer for the mobile? It'd be much more user-friendly. And when I test, I always look at it from the user perspective. And they actually fixed it. They said, okay, yeah, you're right. So, not necessarily a bug, but it's more an enhancement. And then that becomes a case, then that gets fixed. So, browser, mobile, you run into all kinds of issues, all various browsers. You got IE, Fox, Firefox, all these things, Safari. You get them on a PCs, you get them on Macs. Mobile is even tougher because you have so many various devices. We actually use a tool called cross-browser testing. And basically, that has all kinds of devices online that you can log into and test those. And then also with mobile on tablets, now you have landscape. They can flip it to portrait. We've had issues with, sometimes you flip it from one to the other, the screen doesn't resize right, or there's text overlapping, or the left frame isn't staying where it's supposed to stay. And then user experience, like I was mentioning, that's very important as well. If it just doesn't make sense to the user, maybe you have too many buttons in one thing, something just doesn't make any sense. You might have a cancel button when the button really should be saying delete, or vice versa. And it confuses the user. So those are all what I consider issues. Here we go. So who basically writes a bug report? Of course, it's usually testers, but not always. Many times you have developers finding bugs, project managers find bugs. If you train the people right how to actually create a good defect report, then pretty much anybody can do one. Quality assurance, of course, QA does a lot of that, testers. Front-end people, they find things and they log a bug. The customer, we get a lot of defects coming back from the customer when they actually review it, once we deliver it to them. And then even management can do that. Just because they're management doesn't mean if they find an issue, go ahead and log a bug and get your hands dirty. So when should a bug report be written? Basically, what you want to do is, as soon as you find an issue and you can duplicate it and replicate it, then you want to log it as soon as you find it, because then you can send it back to the developer or the themer or whoever can fix it, and they give them feedback right away. So one of the whole points is to give them feedback right away. Don't wait till the end of the day and start logging all your bugs then, when you can log them as soon as you find them. And that's the whole point. You need fast feedback so it gets fixed earlier, especially now with Agile and everything. Once people want to move fast, that's just one way to move things faster. You also want to test once the code is actually in QA, like in a QA environment. Sometimes you get a test on dev. And one thing that's kind of frustrating is they may say, okay, look, go ahead and test this fix. And you look and it's not there yet. And it's like, okay, well, this hasn't been installed yet. Oh yeah, sorry about that. And you just wasted time. And then they have to actually do the build and install it into the environment. So always, before you test something, kind of make sure, even ask the developers, is this really installed? Is this actually in the environment I need to test in? And also, if you find a bug or an issue and it's not quite ready for testing, but you see something, use the actual test, the case, and send it back to the developer instead of having to write a new bug. And send it back to them and say, look, I found these issues. And they're like, okay, these are real issues. Communicate with the developer. And then, or they can tell you, hey, it's just not quite ready yet for prime time. I'm glad you found these. Now I can, think about it instead of having to write a bug. But once it's actually in QA and once it's actually in a place where you can test it, that's when you want to log a defect. Oh, move my mouse. Sorry about that. All right. Yeah. So a big tool is to do a screenshot. That really helps out. And always make sure you can duplicate the bug. I found myself often, you find some issue, click on something, and all of a sudden you get an AJAX error. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do now? And then you click on it again and it's gone. And you can't duplicate it. And maybe later on it actually pops back up again. So just go ahead and do a screenshot of the initial AJAX error and save it, just in case you come across it again. If you never do, maybe it was just a glitch with the environment. But if you do, at least you have it saved. Yeah, there's a few times I'm saying, oh man, I wish I had saved that, All right. So there's certain elements or certain aspects that makes up a good defect case. And basically, the title is very important. It's usually the first thing people see. The description, that's where you can actually describe it in much more detail. You always want to put in steps that actually can be used to replicate the issue. And acceptance criteria is very big as well. That's kind of a new thing we're actually starting. So they actually put in, this is what the criteria is, basically from their requirement. This is how we expect it to work. Now sometimes you're going to still look at the requirement, you take it a little bit with a grain of salt, but that's a good tool to have. You always want to put in expected results. You always want to say, oh yeah, I found this bug. Well, how's this supposed to work? Well, click on this link. It's not supposed to give you a 404. It's supposed to take you to that page.
ask you a question?
Yes.
What's the difference then between expected results and acceptance criteria?
Okay, so acceptance criteria is more, this is what we expect. They'll put in steps sometimes. They'll put in like from the requirement point of view. And expected results are more, if you write a bug, and sometimes you don't have acceptance criteria. That's when you get the expected result. Like, I expect it to work this way. But the acceptance criteria is a little different. And you're right, sometimes there's some gray area between them. But that's usually written by the developer or the project manager or someone who's taking a piece of the requirement and putting it in there. Expected results is something that you're coming up with. Screenshots, videos are always very important. The bug severity, is it really that important? Is it high level? And there's a lot of, that's kind of tricky because sometimes a customer may see something that's very high and important. From a technical aspect or maybe from a developer's point of view, it may not be that important at all. So you always have to kind of work with the customer on that. But if it's like something severity, like if it blocks you, like, hey, I can't even get to this new feature. I can't even test this. That's a blocker. That's definitely a high or critical. So in other words, from a testing point of view, you want that get fixed first because that enables you then to go ahead and complete your testing and look at things. Assign to, who are you going to assign it to? That all depends on a lot of the workflow. Sometimes you assign it directly to the developer or the themer. Usually, I assign it to the lead developer, and then they kind of parse it out who needs to fix it. And some projects, everything had to go to the project manager, and then they would manage it from there. So that can vary who you assign it to. But in my opinion, it's best to assign it to someone who can actually fix it. Status, is the bug open? Have you tested it and it's fixed and you want to close it? And another important thing is, in some tools, say like Jira and other tools like that, you can actually put in a requirement number and actually trace it back to that. So that someone can actually look at, and we use Open Atrium, you can do that too with that, and they can actually look at the case, the initial requirement, the case, and say, oh man, look at all these defects that got found there. And then you can actually research, how come we're finding all these defects in this one functionality? Were the requirements right? Is there some other issue going on? It helps with like root cause. All right, so like I mentioned, the title of the bug is very important. It's the first thing everyone sees. It should be short and concise. And you can always write details in the description field. I've seen titles that actually have, like, almost looks like they're writing, Gone with the Wind. They're like so long, you can't even make out what the problem. You just want to look and be concise. What page is it on? Now, let me give you an example here. All right, here's one. So a good one, what I usually do, and then you can always change this, and you want to put in like the project name. This is, I don't know, Manhattan, say for example. And we're in the first sprint. And then here is the bug. So where is the bug found? So I usually use a section, is it on the home page? Is it on like the about page? Is it on some form? So you always want to put that in there so that they can almost follow it exactly where it is. And then you want a short description of it. Now here's an example. ABC project, Sprint 3 homepage, contact link returns at 404. So you know exactly kind of what's going on. And here's one, a bad one. Like, link does not work. It doesn't help you. I mean, then you have to research, you're going to figure out, what do you mean? Which link? What page? What's going on here? And there's some bad descriptions. Description, like I said, is very important too. Start out with some bad ones. Like, I've seen these actually. So when I move my mouse over this stupid icon, it doesn't wiggle like it should. You're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Clicking on this link doesn't do anything. Like, which link and where are you at? And, you know, this page seems slow to me. That's kind of, okay, well, what do you mean by slow? Can you like time it, or can you give me which page is coming up slow? So these are some examples of bad ones that then you're going to have to research and contact whoever wrote and figure out, okay, what are you talking about? What's going on here? All right, and here's some good examples. Obviously, here's one. Go to the home page, ABC company, click on contact us link in the header, and 404 errors returned, and this occurs in all browsers. So that tells it's not related to the browser. It also gives them the step, and then you have the steps where you navigate to what you need to click on. You know, you give them, here's what happens, here's the expected results, should redirect to the contact page. So those are the good descriptions. There's nothing more frustrating sometimes than a bad description. Screenshots are a great tool. There's a lot of tools out there. I'll go into that here in the next slide or so. And it's a good, quick visual picture, like you take a snapshot and then you just draw an arrow and tell them, hey, here's where the problem is. Especially if it's browser related or theming related or front end related, that's when it really becomes very important. Okay, and here's an example of one. They're picking on Manhattan here, I guess. So there's some bug here in the footers. Obviously these things are sliding over, so you just point an arrow. And sometimes you can actually add text in there if you want to. And here's some tools. Some of these are free, some of these are minimal fees. Sketch, actually I'll use that. I use it a lot. Actually it's Snagit, you know, that's a good tool too. Jing Project, that's something new. A lot of people seem to like that. It does videos as well. And sometimes it's kind of rough if you try and take a screenshot and you move your mouse over and it brings up, say, a drop down, but as soon as you click on doing the screenshot, the drop down goes away. So sometimes I just use Control Print Screen, then save it in Word, and then save that, and then attach that to the defect. So sometimes there's some things that you just have to take an actual snapshot of. Fireshot, that's for Firefox. Fast Zone Capture, that's actually becoming a user favorite. A lot of people have good things to say about it. And here's some video capture tools. That's also important. We're using that more and more. You know, it shows you click on this, you click on that, and here's the actual behavior. And sometimes you use it to prove, hey, I can't duplicate this issue, or here, I can definitely see the bug. So that's a very useful tool too. There's a couple of them. BB Flashback Express is big. UTIP-U is good. Like I mentioned, Jing. Cam Studio, as well as the Screen Toaster. Kind of like that name. That's gaining in popularity. And there's other tools out there as well. Here are just some of the top ones. I think most of those are free. Like I mentioned before, the severity of the bug. Is it like this little bug, like a little ladybug? You know, you feel sorry for them, they're trapped in the window. Or is it this kind of bug? Like, oh my God, you know, this is definitely a mean-looking, critical-looking kind of bug to me. So you want to always put that in there. And then you have some more about bug reporting. You know, we talked about assign to field, assign who can actually fix it. And I mentioned before, who to assign it to depends on the project. You know, sometimes you put it right to the developer, sometimes to the project manager, and usually the lead developer, and they can parse it out. And plus, sometimes you may have a developer that actually fixed the problem or did the initial requirement for it, but they're busy on other projects, but then someone else has to come in. So usually the lead knows, or the project manager knows about the timing, and so I'm sorry, he's busy, but we can hand it off to this other guy, he can fix it too. And like I said, status, you want to keep it open initially. And then once it's fixed and it's tested successfully, depending on the project and the workflow, sometimes you just approve it and then assign it to the project manager, and then they officially close it and notify the client. Or sometimes you can just go ahead and close it. Like, hey, this is fixed, I'm just going to go ahead and close it. Looks good to me. Reference is big. This is like I mentioned before, helps with traceability, and it also helps with finding the root cause of defects. You might have some projects that have a lot of defects from development, and some other projects have a lot of front-end femur issues. And then you try to figure out, maybe like I mentioned before, you could have one or two requirements that have a whole lot more defects than others. And you can try to, if you want to, do a retrospective or post-mortem and try to figure out, okay, how come we had all these problems with this one particular issue? Let's see here. So what happens once you do create a defect? What do you do then? The defect's been fixed, basically. You send it to the developer, they fix it, and it comes back to you. And then the testers, they need to verify to make sure it's fixed. Like I mentioned, if the issue is fixed, then the case can be closed or approved. If not fixed, obviously, then you send it back to the developer or the front end and say, hey, this isn't fixed yet. Or, okay, you fixed it in IE, but it's still an issue in Firefox. You send it back to them with a description, and sometimes it bounces back a few times. But you don't want to just close it or create a new defect. You just keep it open till it's fixed. And here's some tips. Like I said, communication is key. You always want to talk to the developers. We use actually a chat session called Slack. And often I'll just communicate with them, make sure, hey, is this really in development? I found this issue, is it something I need to worry about? Or they may say, oh no, we know about it, it's a known issue. Like I mentioned, you always ask the team they've seen the issue before logging it. And then there's also, like in Jira and OpenAtrium or Bugzilla, different tools like that, you can actually search. And if you're ever new to a project, it's actually a great way to learn something about the project. Always search and look at all the bugs that have been logged. That'll kind of give you like, oh lordy, this area has a lot of problems, or, you know, man, this thing has like, I don't know, 500 bugs, what's going on here? Hey, this thing only has 10 bugs, so maybe it's not that bad of a project. So that kind of gives you a snapshot. And if it's been logged before, then sometimes you can just say, oh, that happens, you know, like, okay, we had this fixed, but now we did some coding changes, and now this issue popped back up again. You just reopen it instead of having to log a new bug and just send it back to the developer and say, hey, I just found this thing again. And sometimes, and it also prevents duplicates. We're pretty good about that, but sometimes you log a defect and they say, oh yeah, that's been logged already, or it's a waste of time. So you try to make sure that there is no duplicates out there, that issue hasn't been logged before. What I mean by, and then also work with a quick fix. Sometimes communicate with the developer and find out, hey, I came across this issue. And they may say, oh, you know, that's the environment. You just need to clear the cache. Oh, you know what? I need to reset the QA server. And then that'll fix the problem. And so you don't need to actually write a bug report. You fixed it. Because, I don't know, personally, it's not my favorite thing to write bug reports. You have to do them. But if you can prevent doing that and it's a quick fix, just takes me a few seconds to fix it, then go with that. Like I said, if it's not a quick fix, then you definitely want to log it. And then toward the end of the release, that's when things get critical. That's what we call crunch time. And you have a lot of nervous people, particularly the project managers, and I don't know, a lot of stress going on. And so you can find a defect. The thing to remember is if you find a defect and you assign it to a developer, they're just going to start fixing it, whether they need to or not. So you want to contain the defects so that you run them by, here I found this issue. Does this need to be fixed now? Or can it be fixed later in the next sprint or the next release? And so you have to be cognizant of the fact that as soon as you sign something, someone's going to jump and fix it. But not everything, especially at the end, because then it'll delay it. Not only that, but they can fix it and then introduce new bugs. So once you're already near the end and things are looking good, you really only want to fix critical or blockers or really issues that are something that the project manager feels that needs to be fixed. And then you can put them on, sometimes we just put them on backlog, that's one of the statuses, or move them to the next release. Therefore, you don't have to fix them right away. So you always want to be aware of that. I've been on the receiving end where I'm just doing my job. Hey, here's a bug. I'm going to log it to the developer. And they start fixing it. It's like, oh, yeah, we're trying to release tonight. You don't need to be putting any more code in here. Okay. And here's something from Parallel Left Dodge. One of the things to remember is, you can't be inspected into a product. Basically, QA quality needs to be built in from the very beginning, from the design, the concept, to the actual requirements. Make sure they have quality requirements and go through the whole gamut. It's tough to, here, check out this code, and then, you're finding all these bugs, and a lot of these things could have prevented if maybe the requirements had been better, or things like that have been done more efficient. Something that Deming is big into producing as well. And let's see here. So basically, thank you, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
With your last slide, in some large cultures, the logging of a trouble ticket and then its resolution is a metric that certain teams use to do that. Part of that discretion, is this a quick fix or not? If it's not going to be fixed quick or not, then you go ahead and log it. Whereas sometimes it's if it's a quick fix, just get it done. And of course, you get your culture, whether the culture, I guess, really determines where you make that choice for that call, whether to log it or not. I'm curious, I guess in your situation, the firms you've been working for, you've got that. Do you try to log everything, even the small quick fixes?
Yeah, there's kind of a tendency from QA initially, mainly from waterfall probably. You see a bug, you log it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in a more of an agile, or it's more about communicating, and sometimes you find an issue and they say, oh, okay, that's a good issue, but it's going to be fixed in the next release, or yeah, we know about it already, or we just need to flush the cache, that'll fix the issue. You know, that saves you time from actually having to write the bug. And then you check it. And if whatever, resetting the environment or flushing the environment, but you always want to make a note of that. You can be, it's kind of tricky too, because you can also fall into the trap where they're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. This next release will fix everything. And then you're like, yeah, I've been down that road. I've been burnt many times on that too. Yeah. So then you might, if the release is early, like, hey, next day or two, you can check it and say, oh no, that bug's still there, then you log it. And you want to give them a little chance there to see if it actually fixed it. But you want to put a note in there. Or sometimes what I've done is I'm like, I don't know. You know, this developer's told me that many times before. And, you know, I get burnt because then the bug's still there. So you can actually log it and assign it to yourself and say, okay, and then you keep track of these issues. And if sometimes if they're fixed, then fine, the guy was right, the lady was right, you go ahead and close it. But if it's still there, at least you have it logged. So you're right, it's kind of like you're kind of walking a tightrope there. But usually I'm talking more about environment issues or quick fixes like that. But be careful when they say, oh, don't worry about it, man. It'll be fixed later. Don't, you know. And I'm like, okay, sure. I've been burnt many times doing that. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I've got a question about, I guess it's more of like a personal experience kind of thing, but in a site, like we have a client that uses Zendesk, where their users can submit, you know, issues that they have. So we're talking general public, you know, go to register on a website. They've got a little help button on the side, and it's configured to be very open as far as the information they have to submit. So we get support tickets that are like, hey, I don't know what URL means, you know, and you know what I mean? Like very like end user type of issues that get dumped back on developers, you know. So with those kinds of public-facing help systems, you know, it'd be nice to say, hey, before you submit this ticket, we need to know, you know, all these things, steps to reproduce the issue, send us a screenshot. But if they don't know what URL is, they don't know how to screenshot it either. So you got to kind of have that balancing act between being customer-friendly and, you know, gathering useful information. And so I wonder if, you know, maybe you could advise it where that balance is.
Yeah, so that's true. Sometimes some of the most, in fact, some of the bad examples I wrote came directly from clients. So one thing, it's not really anything to do with wrong. Part of it is educating them and training them how to write a good defect. And one thing you can do is come up with a checklist. Say, okay, make sure you tell me what page it's on, just tell me what browser you found it on, you know, name the URL, you know, stuff like that. And then you really kind of also want to have, in many of our projects, the project managers, you want someone sometimes to filter those out first. Like, okay, these may be legitimate issues, or these may be, you know, we can't make heads or tails. And sometimes just reach out back to the person who wrote it, send them an email back, and say, can you give us more information about that? And sometimes they're willing to do that. So that's kind of, yeah, sometimes but the main thing is trying to produce a checklist and give it to your clients and tell them, look, here are the good elements of a defect. And tell us what browser, what page you found on, the name of the URL, and what's going on. Just some basic things, nothing major. And you'll be surprised, they'll help you. Hey, can you do a screenshot of it? And the more you educate them, the better they become at writing defects. So they're not all nebulous and you're going to do all this research. And plus, you don't want to like say, hey, you know, I don't think you know what you're talking about, and upset the client, you know. Like you said, it's a balancing act.
Well, and I'm not talking about the site owner. I'm talking about their end users, you know. So
I think
much more general public.
Yeah, I think Google and other websites, you know, more internet kind of based websites, I'll actually have in there where you can actually put in a feedback or a comment. And usually I've done that and I find a bug. That's always interesting when you're doing testing for bugs all day, you log on some other website and you start seeing them all over the place, you know. So, yeah, I'll point out, hey, you know, this thing isn't quite working right, and then usually it's a customer service or some maybe front-end person like that that'll reply and say, oh yeah, thanks for logging that. Yeah, we know about that. Are we going to fix it? Or, oh yeah, thank you so much. You know, or you know, we can't duplicate it. So then they come back with that. So, but you have to filter them out, and even it might even be a good idea, like the page that they have to click on. Like it says here, log a feedback, or if you find an issue or something, maybe even a little balloon help. Put in some help information. If you please can, you put it in the browser. If it's put in, you know, some other information and things like that. Some other sites, although it could be considered intrusive, actually reach in. They grab your system's information. So they'll know you have say a Windows 10 machine and you're using IE 11. And you know, you have X amount of memory and all this other stuff. So I don't know if everybody would want that, but they're like, look, these people aren't writing good defects, so we'll just go and grab that information and then behind the scenes actually attach it to the information. But then they have to send something in to your machine to grab that.
Right, I've seen that in apps, like in-app bug reports. You know, if an app crashes or something like that, it'll create a bug report in a minute. So that's kind of good. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for attending, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned and got something out of this.